Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is Freemasonry and the Osiris Myth by Manly P. Hall. An article taken from The All-Seeing Eye, Volume 5, Number 3, December 1930. Freemasonry and the Osiris Myth by Manly P. Hall. To the Freemason as well as the student of comparative religion, the legend of Isis and Osiris must be of utmost significance. While the life and death of this mythological king have been recounted by several ancient authors, it is from Plutarch that we derive the material for this brief survey. Denuded of its superfluities, the story centers around the activities of four persons: Osiris, the Black King of the Nile, and later regent of Amend; Isis, his sister, wife, and widow; Typhon, the brother of Osiris and the spirit of evil; and Horus, the hawk-headed prince of the sun and the avenger of his murdered father. The story is briefly this. Osiris, having established his empire in Egypt, set forth on a tour of colonization, leaving his brother Typhon as regent in his absence. Typhon, having tasted of sovereignty, had no desire to relinquish the throne and began plotting how to remove Osiris from the path of his ambitions. At last he contrived a scheme abetted by 72 fellow conspirators whom he enlisted in his service. Osiris, unaware of the designs against his life, returned triumphantly to Egypt, where Typhon met him with elaborately simulated rejoicing. The feasts in honor of the triumphant king formed a vital part of the plot. Typhon had constructed a wonderful ark or chest, its surface inlaid with precious stones and its inner dimensions shaped to the measure of a man. The assembled princes of the land examined the box, amazed at its strange shape and charmed with its unusual beauty. Typhon then declared that the chest had been fashioned by clever workmen to supply novelty and sport at this glad time, and that he would present the priceless ark to the person whose body most closely conformed to its inner shape. The various nobles, each desiring to own the fabulously beautiful box, each in turn lay down in it, but for each it was either too long or too short, too broad or too narrow. At last none remained but Osiris himself, and one of the princes suggested that maybe he was of the right proportions. Laughingly, Osiris removed his crown and lay down in the box. A cry of amazement went up, for the chest fitted him exactly. But even as the court watched, there was a great commotion without. The 72 conspirators rushed into the banquet hall. They nailed down the lid upon the casket, poured molten lead into the cracks, and before the faithful princes of Osiris could rally to his support, carried the ark out of the palace and cast it into the Nile, down which it floated to the coast of Byblos. Isis, queen of Egypt and faithful consort of Osiris, learning of the foul murder of her lord and donning the sackcloth and ashes of a widow, set forth in quest of the body of her husband. After many adventures, she discovered that the ark had been caught in the roots of a tree, which had miraculously grown up about the box, finally completely concealing it. The king of Byblos had caused this wonderful tree to be cut down, and from its trunk had been fashioned a great pillar for the throne room of his palace. Isis at last contrived to secure the body from the pillar and was returning in triumph to the city of Osiris, when Typhon, learning that she had been successful in her search, dispatched hirelings who again stole the body, and that it might never be recovered, divided the remains of the king into 14 pieces, which they scattered through all the corners of the earth. Frantically, Isis again set forth in her attempt to recover the scattered parts and members of Osiris. At last, after what seemed ages of searching, she recovered 13 of the pieces, but the 14th had been cast into the sea and swallowed by a great fish. This member Isis caused to be replaced in gold, and the body of Osiris was interred in the great city over which he had ruled. Typhon, the usurper, sat uneasy on his throne, for Horus, the young son of Osiris, grew up to manhood with a single aim, namely, to avenge his father's murder and the long years of his mother's widowhood. At last, in a great battle, he overthrew the reign of Typhon and restored the rule of right in Egypt. But the great Osiris still lay dead, and his role as an underworld god forms no part of the allegory. So much for the outline as Plutarch gives it. Now let us attempt to see the relationship between this legend and the doctrines of Freemasonry. It has been generally admitted that the Osirian cult contributed much to Freemasonic lore, and even the Hiramic legend has been traced to this origin by Masonic scholars. The story of Osiris as here given is obviously comparatively late and belongs to a period when Egyptian metaphysics was in a state of decline. But while the profundities of the legend may have been lost upon the Greeks and Romans, these nations still remembered enough of the ancient mysteries to sense the vast significance of this most remarkable allegory. Osiris, the black god of the Nile, must be regarded as the personification of an order of learning. He was never a man, but the embodiment of an idea. It is even possible that he represented a hierarchy or order of priests. As Hermes personified the whole sphere of knowledge, so Osiris embodied the secret and most sacred wisdom. Unquestionably, he was later confused with other members of the vast pantheon of divinities, but to the elect, he represented primordial knowing, that utter realization of truth, undefiled by intellection, unlimited by mortal procedures, uncircumscribed by any limitation of thinking. He may have also been the prototype of those who possessed certain spiritual faculties, or even recognized as a symbol for a definite discipline. He signified not only the end, but revealed the means to the achievement of that end. The personality of Osiris might well typify the institutions erected by the ancients to perpetuate the deathless truths of the soul. The living head was crowned with the plumes of wisdom and power, the hands bore the scepters of the three worlds, and the body was bound with the mummy wrappings of the dead. Here we find spirit, the living head, bound incongruously to matter, the mummified body. The soul was imprisoned in the narrow bonds of flesh. One thing is certain: Osiris represented the secret doctrine prior to that time when the omnific word was lost. From the reign of Osiris we glean then the following. There was a time when truth and wisdom ruled the earth, and this autocracy of wisdom was a benevolent despotism in which men were led to a nobler state by the firm, kind hand of the enlightened sage. This was the divine dynasty of the mythological priest kings who were qualified to govern humanity by virtue of not only temporal, but divine attributes. Osiris, representative of the hidden tradition, ruled the world by virtue of the perfection resident in that tradition. If we concede that Osiris is the positive pole of the universal life agent, then Isis becomes the receptive pole of that activity. He is the doctrine, she is the church. As in Christendom, it is customary to refer to the church as the bride of Christ. So in Egypt, the institution of the mysteries was the Great Mother, the consort of heaven itself. From this interpretation, we gain a deeper insight into the symbolism involved. Isis becomes the whole temporal order of the priesthood. She is personified in the temple. She is the mother of all good, the protectress of all right, and the patron of all improvements. She ensures nobility, inspires virtue, and awakens the nobler passions of the soul. As Diana of Ephesus, she is the multimamia who feeds all creatures from herself. Like the moon, she shines only with the light of her sovereign sun, even as the temple can only be illumined by indwelling truth. Typhon is the embodiment of every perversity. He is neither a single evil nor even a sequence of ills, but an infinite diversity of them, indescribably insidious in the power to infect the fabric of church and state. Typhon lures Osiris into the ark at the time when the sun enters the house of the scorpion. Hence we know that he is the eternal betrayer, that ageless Judas who undoes all good things and inevitably presages ruin. He strikes in the 8th month, and now it is supposed that a child delivered in the 8th month cannot live because of the curse of Typhon. This evil monster may well be generalized under the appellation of the adversary. Of all good things, he is the opposer, occupying the position of the inevitable negative. He is the personification of ambition, and ambition is the patron of ruin. It was ambition that set Typhon plotting for the throne of Egypt, designing how he could destroy the power of his brother. A learned Jesuit father sees in Typhon Cain and his brother Osiris Abel. If such parallel actually exists, then the biblical allegory is susceptible of the same interpretation. Typhon is the desire of the few pitted against the good of the many. He is the spirit of dissension and discord that breaks up unity of purpose by setting factions against each other, so that great issues lose the name of action. The desire for riches, power, pomp, sovereignty by which this evil genius was obsessed reveals the temptations by which humanity is deflected from its ultimate goal and led into the byways of sorrow and despair. The birth of greed marked the end of the Golden Age, and when the good prince Osiris, the deeper truth, returned to his own land, the trap was ready to be sprung. What is this mysterious box, so beautiful in its outward appearance, but so fatal? Plato would have answered that it was the body that lures the soul into the sorrows of generation. If this interpretation be projected into a wider sphere, it becomes symbolic of material organization. Witness the application of this thought to Christianity, where the pomp and glory of the outer show has all but destroyed the simplicity and meaning of the primitive revelation. The murderers rush from the palace with the lead-sealed casket and cast it and its princely contents into the dark waters of the Nile. Thus are the ideals which lead men into the paths of truth and righteousness obscured, and with truth no longer evident, error can rule supreme. Typhon ascended the throne as a regent of the world, swinishly gloating over a humanity he had led into dark and devious byways. With truth dead, facts were superseded by opinions. Opinions bred hates, and men finally fought and died over notions both senseless and soulless. Greed became the dominating impulse, gain the all-absorbing end, and ruthlessness the all-sufficient means. In the dark ages of uncertainty, when reality hid its face and no man dared to know, the leering Typhon ruled his ill-gotten world, binding men to himself by breeding 1,000 uncertainties to sap courage and weaken conviction. Men asked, why seek to know? Knowledge does not exist, and life is a cruel jest, purposeless and of short duration. Because the human mind demanded expression, Typhon sowed the seeds of intellectual confusion, so that numerous orders of learning appeared which were convincingly plausible but untrue. These various orders of thought survived by catering to the weaknesses and limitations of the flesh. Today, our great industrial civilization is feeling the heavy hand of an outraged destiny. The evil genius of our ambitions has again undone us and made our follies crumble about us. Typhon rules the world, for the earth today is the arena of the ambitious. What then of Isis, the mother of the mysteries, so defiled and desecrated by the profane that the sages and prophets were forced to flee into the wilderness to escape the machinations of the evil one? The mighty temple still stood, but their light had gone. The priests bowed hopelessly before the dead embers of their altars. One by one, the sanctuaries crumbled into ruin, and the custodians of these ancient truths hid themselves in obscure corners of the earth, lest they be hunted down and slain for the sin of dreaming and hoping for a better day. Isis, then, is the temple where men today gather, searching for that secret that is lost. In all parts of the world, the virtuous still raise their hands to the heavens. This congregation of those who pray, who labor, and who wait, the great congregation of a world in anguish, this is Isis in sackcloth and ashes. Seeking in all parts of the earth throughout the ages, men at last rediscovered the lost arcana and brought it back with rejoicing to the world over which once it ruled. But ambition, knowing that it must die if truth was re-established, put forth all its power to scatter the doctrine once again, this time so thoroughly that it should never be rediscovered. So the body of Osiris, the secret doctrine, was divided into 14 parts and divided among the races of mankind. It was scattered so hopelessly that ambitious Typhon felt his authority to be secure at last. But wisdom is not thus easily to be cheated. In the dark retreats of Islam, the Sufi and Dervish explored the depths of nature. Among the Jews, the learned rabbins unraveled the intricate skein of Kabbalism, and alchemists in their retreats explored the infinite chemistry of existence. These all together were Isis, still searching for the members of her Lord. At last all were restored again but one, but this one could not be reclaimed. The Egyptian allegory tells us that the phallus of Osiris was swallowed by a fish. This is most significant, and we may even infer that mankind itself is the fish, the phallus being the symbol of the vital power, and so used in Egyptian hieroglyphics, is the lost word which was not discovered, but for which a golden replica was substituted. This is the substitute word of Freemasonry. It gives the body the appearance of completeness, but the life power is not there. Isis, the priesthood, had accomplished all that could be accomplished. The institutions raised in the world to perpetuate the deeper truths of life labored on through the centuries, seeking for that lost key, which if rediscovered would enliven the whole and restore the good Osiris to the rulership of the world. The purpose of Isis was now revealed as twofold. The first motive was the almost hopeless effort to restore her dead husband to life. That was the great abstract ideal. The second and more imminent motive was to avenge herself upon Typhon and to destroy his power over the world. The work of Freemasonry as a mystery school now emerges from the obscurity that has so long enshrouded it. Freemasonry is Isis, the mother of mysteries, from whose dark womb the initiates are born into the mystery of the second or philosophic birth. Thus Freemasons, by virtue of their participation in the rites, are figuratively at least the sons of Isis. As Isis is the widow, seeking to restore her lord, it follows that Masons are widows' sons. They are the offspring of the institution widowed by the loss of the word and of the eternal quest. In the Egyptian rites, Horus is the savior avenger, son of Isis, conceived before the brutal murder of Osiris. Hence, he is the redeemer. Freemasons are Hori. Each is a Horus, each is a hawk of the sun, and for one reason is each one raised, and that is to avenge the destruction of wisdom. Each one is dedicated to the overthrowing of the reign of Typhon, which is the mysterious Armageddon, when the hosts of the adversary shall be routed forever. The great purposes of Freemasonry are thus revealed in an unsuspected clarity. Freemasonry is philosophically opposed to the reign of ambition. Its duty is to re-establish that golden age when wisdom, personified as Osiris, and not greed, personified by Typhon, shall dictate the course of human procedure. The day must ultimately come when the Horai, by virtue of their royal purpose, accomplish the consummation of the great work. The missing word will be found, the golden substitute will be cast aside, and as promised in the ancient rite, Osiris will rise resplendent from the dead and rule the world through those sages and philosophers in whom wisdom becomes incarnate. In the meantime, the widow, the mystery school, continues to produce out of herself a host of potential redeemers, one of whom must someday become the true Horus, the avenger of all evil. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.